Okay, so in this video, this is going to be part one of my perfect pitch test generating app, Android Studio, Kotlin. So, with that in mind, we're going to start a new Android Studio project called Perfect Pitch. New project. This will be an empty views activity. So the activity name will be Perfect Pitch. Okay, so this will be part one where we're just going to put together the user interface. In part two, we'll actually add the functionality. So the idea behind this app is it's going to have like 20 or so randomly generated, basically musical letter names. The name, A to G. There'll be a button to randomly generate a new test. Some checkboxes to, the idea is you would play them on the piano, then somebody would guess what the letter name is, and if they get it right, you would check the checkbox. If possible, I'd like to make that letter name actually play the note when you click on it, so then you don't even have to be near a piano to do the perfect pitch test. So anyway, that is what we're going to do. So today is just the user interface. We'll be using two types of layout. Constraint layout, which is the way it is now, and linear layout. So the way the constraint layout is each of these constraints you could think of as almost being like magnetic attraction to whatever the parameter is. So in this case, constraint bottom to bottom of, so that means like the bottom of this text view is kind of being magnetically pulled to the bottom of parent being the linear, or the constraint layout. Just getting pulled down towards this. At the same time, it's being pulled towards the top of the parent, the result being that it ends up in the middle. So if we were to, say, delete that for a second, so now it's no longer being pulled to the top of the parent, only to the bottom, and it went rocketing down to the bottom. So we'll put it back to normal. So we don't actually need hello world in there, but it's not what we're going to have. Instead, we're going to have a couple linear layouts. Linear layout. And the linear layouts need to have some attributes. Let's see if it auto completed for us. The one thing about these constraint layouts is you don't want these elements to match parent. You want it to wrap content. I can demonstrate why in a bit. Okay, and we're going to make our orientation horizontal. What that means is when we put stuff into the linear layout, it's going to come one after the other in a horizontal fashion. And finally, we want to give it an ID. And I'll give it an ID of linear layout 1, because we're being real good and creative here. Okay, so that's a linear layout. It's giving us some kind of a warning. Set Android orientation to specify whether child views are displayed in a row or a column. Yeah, I did that. See the linear layout guide for an example. Do I have to have a gravity? I don't think that I do. No, I have a width and a height, orientation, ID. Oh, and the constraints, of course. So I'm going to constrain to top of parent. And we could be having a problem because there's nothing in the linear layout yet. So let's just put one of the checkboxes in. Once again, we want to wrap content. I'll change one of these later to be like match parent or something. And it needs an ID, of course. And it needs a text size. So there's a checkbox within the linear layout. The view is not constrained horizontally. So, okay, we need to constrain it horizontally too. So first I'll constrain it to the left. So that'll be the start. You see what that did? It sort of put it to the left. If we constrain it to the end of parent as well, it'll end up sort of being pulled both ways, which puts it in the middle, like that. So directly in the middle. So now we're going to add 5 different checkboxes instead of just one. Okay, so there's 5 different checkboxes. So you can see what the linear layout is doing. It's putting them one after the other in a horizontal fashion. Next, we're going to put in another linear layout. I'll put a single checkbox in it. I'll just sort of copy and paste this one for now with the single checkbox, just so you can see what it does. Right now, it's not going to do much. So first we need to give it a unique ID. The checkbox needs a unique ID as well, and we don't even know where it is. Well, we do because it's kind of giving us a preview. But as you can see, it's overlapping the linear layout up above. So we need to constrain it differently. So our first one's called linear layout 1. Right, as we see here. And we're going to add a constraint, which is constrain top of this new linear layout to the bottom of linear layout 1. So that's one thing that we need to do. And we need to constrain the bottom. Okay, so we don't want that. There we go. Now we only have one top constraint. And you can see what it did. So now we'll just fill in the other checkboxes for this one as well. 5 checkboxes. You can see what it did there. Okay, once again, we're going to add another linear layout. It's all about linear layouts and making them conform to the constraint layout that they live in. Okay, so first things first, Android Studio is telling us that we have an error, so we need to give it a unique name. And we'd like this one to be constrain its top to the bottom of linear layout 2. We're not going to see any effect of that until we actually put something in there, which will be the next. I'll just stick all the checkboxes in there because we kind of get the idea at this point. Five checkboxes. And we'll do a similar thing with the next linear layout. This will be number 4. Need its end tag. And its top needs to be, its constraint of its top needs to be to the bottom of linear layout 3. You can see it sort of went below 3. There's nothing in it, so it just looks like a skinny line. I'll grab our checkboxes again. I'm just copying and pasting. They have unique names. These are like text view D 1 through 4. And finally, we'll do our last linear layout with checkboxes. This will be number 5. And it's going to be constrained to the bottom of number 4. There we see what happened again. It went below linear layout 4. I'll grab my checkboxes again, put them in there. Now these ones need to be named the E. And finally, we're going to have a button at the bottom for like generating a new test. Button. Wrap content. You can see where the button ended up, not where we want it. I don't know if we need to do that. I think we can just have it within a tag like that. We need some text. Generate test. Now we need to constrain this. Layout constraint. Looking for autocomplete here. Okay, let's just spell in ID first. Generate test button. Spelling Android correctly would probably be desirable. It's interesting. It doesn't seem to be finding the constraints. What we want to do is we want to do a similar thing. Constrain top to bottom of. Okay, we want to constrain bottom. Oh, these are not Android, they're app. That's the issue. Yeah, okay, so now we have all these constraints we can look at. So we want to constrain the bottom of the button. Constrain bottom to bottom of parent. And look where it goes. Let's similarly app layout constraint. I want to constrain the start. Constrain start to start of parent. And it's already doing that. Oh, we want layout. Well, constrain the end to the end of the parent. And off to the middle it goes. So we got our button sitting at the bottom. We have our test up there, but you kind of might notice that that test is kind of crammed together in a way. We might think, what can we do about that? I guess we could start with linear layout, the bottom one. It could be 5. And so if we constrain that to the bottom of the parent, it's still constrained to the one above it, but if it's also constrained down to the bottom of the parent, it should end up about halfway. So let's try that. Layout constraint bottom to bottom of parent. And there we go. Like I said, about halfway. There's these sort of spring looking things that actually show exactly where the constraints are. And in a similar way, we're going to do like a constrained bottom, except it's going to be bottom to top of whatever constraint is below it, or whatever child of this layout is below it. That'll be the top of ID linear layout 5. See what it did there. And we're going to do might as well just copy and paste that. Linear layout 3. Obviously that's incorrect. That's going to go to 4. There we go. And 2 is going to be in between 1 and 3. I think that math checks out. And there we go. So now this thing's spaced out in a little bit more of a palatable manner. Okay, so that's the user interface. Now I'm just going to do just a little bit of code to basically get references to all of that. So we need a button and what to name it. I gave it a good name in my sort of proof of concept thing. So I'm going to do the same. So I'll look at the activity main of my proof of concept program. Okay, generate test button. Sure. That will be a button. We're going to use autocomplete because autocomplete will put the import statement up at the top. This is going to point to our button this one here. So the question is, where do we do that? We do it in the onCreate function of the activity. It's basically, this is the entry point of the app. What did I do there? I commented it out. Okay, and so this activity has a find view by ID function. That's how we find our reference to here. Let's generate test button. I guess remember that. So r.id. I think R is a class that gets generated based on this guy, our XML file. Generate test button. There we go. And I'll make it do something just to test the code. We have this set on click listener. The parameter it takes is a lambda function. Well, it doesn't have to be a lambda function. That's just the most convenient way to do it. And it does some magic behind the scenes. I think it actually sort of creates a class for you behind the scenes that has this listener function. So we'll just make it do a toast. I'll make it say, I am button. Hear me roar. Oh, a duration. Length short equals 0. It's not going to be up for 0 seconds. That's just kind of a signifier to Android for some short duration of time. And dot show. You never want to write too much code before you give it a build. Well, and so when I build it, it's going to run on this emulator, this phone emulator. I have a real tablet here that it's usually much faster to run it on your real phone or tablet. Here's our build information. And it ran. Let's just press the button. I am button, hear me roar. Okay, so there. I don't like to write too much code before actually building and even testing if it's possible to test at that point. I think we can just minimize that. The last thing we do is we want to get references to all these elements. So we're going to do it in just sort of the ridiculous manual kind of way. It's a bunch of checkboxes. Test item, checkboxes. We're going to make an array list of checkbox. Hopefully that put checkbox in our import statements. We need to initialize it because we didn't qualify it with the late init keyword. We're going to initialize it right away. Checkbox. Everything seems happy still. Reference button and its behavior. Here will be reference to checkboxes and their behavior. I'll just do the first few. And that's going to be a find view by ID, like with the button. R.ID dot text view A1 is what I believe I'm looking for. These are checkboxes, but I gave them IDs of text view. Checkboxes probably derive from text view. I'll just add the ones in the top row for now. I'll add the rest at a later time. Or I guess I can just add them all now. Just adding the underscore. It's just one of my personal coding styles, I guess. I think it comes from C#. To make member variables have that underscore first. Test item checkboxes. Okay, we'll just make that match. There we go. And you can see, yes, it's a very manual process. Later, I'm going to learn how to programmatically generate these UI elements. But at least now these are all part of the array list. So we don't have to do anything stupid like this from now on. Now finally, we want its behavior. So for test item check box in test item checkboxes. We're going to set on click listener. Once again, that takes a lambda function. Ignore the first parameter. We're going to toast. I'll copy and paste the toast from up here, so I don't have to use my memory. Instead of I am button here, me roar, we'll make it actually be the content of the, like the text content. Text dot to string. This toast function takes a string. It doesn't take a whatever text is. Now we will build it. So here in the build box, make sure we didn't break the build. Doesn't appear that we did. We'll give her a test run. That phone came up a little quicker this time. Okay, so the button still does what it's supposed to do. We'll click on one of these guys. So check the box, and it put up a little toast. Toast is a word for message box. And then we can decheck them. And they make the toast come up. If this was something different than X, it would be the toast would say something different than X. That's about all for today. I figured just the UI would be sort of a video unto itself, and we'll add the functionality next video to randomly assign these to different piano letter names, and hopefully play the note if we can accomplish that. So on that note, thanks for watching.